Da da da. Okay. Here we are, we're back. This time I've added coordinates on the board. Tell me in the comments if you think this board theme is okay. I'm a little bit iffy about it. Um, this is what I use pretty much always nowadays, and I really like it. But yeah, let me know. It is a little bit on the darker side, or more contrasty side, which I actually like. So we're gonna hop into another 10-minute game. And I'm going to try today, as you can see, to attack. Uh-oh, I don't hear sound. There we go. And of course, I'm still playing the French because I really need to work on my theory, but hopefully we'll get something. And already this is much more open, so that's good. So even though the theme is attacking, I might still move my knight out here. All right. Well, let's think. Opponent immediately attacks the knight. I'm probably moving too fast to begin with. And now they immediately jump in. Now what does this do? I think I can just develop my knight. Now I'm actually threatening to take. I don't see what their threat is. So we'll see. Ultimately, I'm thinking maybe I should have left my bishop here. Not only does this defend, but it allows me to break the pin with the queen more easily. I actually really struggle still with these knights against me. All right, so we're getting into something concrete. So now I could push the bishop back if I wanted to. Obviously I can't take the knight now. Well, speaking of attacking, that would be very interesting to throw pawns forward. You couldn't exactly go all the way. So now the knight takes. We have an interesting thing, but really not that interesting because if I take the bishop, I lose a tempo. So now that was an interesting choice because now we have some pressure. Interesting. So my first thought is take this, but it's very risky, of course, because then there's a pin here. If I take it and they push the pawn, I can check and get out of it. But it's still not ideal. I could also go here, threatening it this way, but then they could just push. I could also go here, threatening to move the bishop, and just put pressure on. I think I want to swing my rook over. I don't like getting this rook trapped, but okay, now I could defend, or I could attack. So now bishop defends. That's fine. Now this pawn is hanging, but so is this one. Let's start. We can still be prudent. Start here. Now this pawn is under fire. If it pushes, I can go back with my bishop and take it. And otherwise, yeah. Now the king moves out of the way. So I guess once again I have to retreat. Well, obviously the opponent won't just let me do whatever I want. We'll move here. This is technically possible, but I think it would be a bad move. But I'm okay with allowing the opponent to go for it. Now I talked about moving this rook over. I never know which rook to move because I don't think the f-file will become relevant anytime soon but I couldn't say for certain. So, bishop chasing us around. I really want to punish this, but obviously this file is now blocked for me. So I should move over. If I do this, the rook will probably just kick me away. So instead we'll move the queen over 1. And now I really want to get rooks over and doubled up on this file. Probably I would go here, one way or the other. But of course, opponent could also, well, if opponent moves the rook, then okay. So now we could, it's not super attack E, but we could take and win this pawn. Unfortunately, that does get rid of our light square bishop. So instead, let's use this time to activate the rook. So opponent trades, which is not surprising. And immediately moves the knight back. Now it's very tempting to just slam the rook as far forward as possible. Or even to do this, because if the knight, well then the knight could immediately fork, so maybe not. But yeah, let's be prudent for now. Move the rook up here. Now we also have the option to swing it over. Knight immediately goes there. I'm thinking about dropping the queen back to try to eventually triple up. Pawn could push, though, which I did not think about. And then we can move the rook here, actually, because the knight can't attack it from anywhere. So the rook could step up, and then we might have something like this. But no, opponent really likes chasing us around. I'm not sure what the point is supposed to be. But let's continue putting pressure. Now the knight isn't quite threatened yet, and now that loses a pawn. And if the knight moves, then that's very bad, of course. And if the knight doesn't move, well, this pawn is pinned. So opponent immediately sacrifices. Now opponent is moving very quickly. Well, not actually. 6:30, that's not too bad. And now, though the attack hasn't ended in checkmate, it has ended in a win of material, or a gain of material. Now I think I'm just going to double up. Now we're threatening, almost checkmate. And I don't see any concrete threats for the opponent. Now this, I think, is a mistake. The point is, of course, we're pinning the rook to the king, so the rook cannot take our queen. We're also almost threatening to take. And now we have a choice. Well, let's do some calculation. If we take the rook, then If the knight takes, we can't do that. So we could check first. If queen takes, I don't like that. So how about we take the rook? If knight takes, I can't figure it out. That means I need to calculate more. Okay. So rook takes, knight takes. What's the follow-up? Rook here. Really tying the queen down to defense. But then we can't really go back. Or we can't trade the queen because after we trade, the rook would be hanging. If we go queen here immediately, queen takes, rook takes. And then we're doing quite well, I think. But I don't really want to trade the queens. But also rook takes. Knight takes. And go here, which I like a lot better. To the point, and if the queen takes, but that's not going to happen. So now the point would be to double up while putting pressure on the pawns. And I think that's an okay move. Doubling on the 8th isn't exactly standard, but it should be fine. Or we could also threaten the queen here because the knight is pinned, but the queen could take. Okay. Well, this might have been a mistake. I am also looking at like rook takes, queen takes, and we just start winning pawns. That's not really an attack. But I really like it for some reason. Because now we're threatening this. Just opponent's pawns are very weak. If they try to infiltrate, we can just slide the king over one step and defend all the infiltration squares, basically. But opponent doesn't do that. First, they defend this pawn. We could trade, but that would not work out for us. So let's see. We gotta move faster though. Let's threaten this pawn. We are up 2 pawns, so in theory, we should be able to win pawn end games. So now, as long as we don't give the king a big head start, but we're also quite low on time. So interesting. Opponent jettisons the pawn and the other pawn. I think maybe they just missed something. And at this point, we can start going for trades quite easily. While also improving our position. But no. Opponent trades the queens, wins back 1 pawn, but now we're up 3 pawns. And this should be fairly elementary, I would think. So we'll start with this. And there's just too much going on. If the king goes that way, then yeah, we win all the pawns, and then we have 3 pawns to nothing with the king on the wrong side of the board. And that was a pretty nice win, I think. I can't analyze using game review because I already did that earlier this morning when I played before I slept. Well, I say earlier this morning. It's actually evening for me, but we can still switch over to self-analysis and just check this out. So I think the opening was pretty normal. And then immediately, so this was a mistake because the engine wants h6, just immediately pushing back, or c5, which makes sense because this pawn is now stuck. It's easy to overload, which I didn't see. We went over here, traded off, and now apparently we were winning a lot with bishop takes, and I was just too much of a coward to do it. Bishop f5 is what it wants, and then I think just probably, well, let's see. There was a chance here with bishop takes. Oh yeah, once again, winning the pawn was just better. I don't know why I didn't want to do that. I had the idea of keeping some sort of initiative, but it was silly. And from here, was this actually correct? It was not. Rook e1 was better. Queen c1's not even on the list. That's okay. And then this was definitely not, but it actually only lost about a point of advantage because now we just, and then opponent just messed up. Okay. Fairly good game. Well, how do I do this now? There's probably a way to close a tab without messing up the screen, just a shortcut, but I don't know it. According to this review, 0 mistakes, 0 blunders, and 1 miss, which I will take. And that didn't take too long, so let's go again. Oops, I apologize, I had the wrong setup. Let's try to attack. We had black the first game, now we have white. Now I actually don't know any very many good openings with white at all. I used to play the Spanish, but I never actually looked up theory. But we'll try for e4. Oh, and this makes it easier because we're going to have a sharper game, I imagine. Interesting. So I've seen this before, but not very much. Obviously, it's attacked twice, so I can't defend it unless I want to push this pawn, which I could do. It's not exactly extremely attacking, I suppose. But as a result now, we have won a pawn. Now, yeah, and now we're just going to continue. Now, there's no pawns around the knight, so I feel safer doing this. Because, obviously, if this knight could be pushed away, I would lose castling rights. Which, since I've lost my 2 central pawns, isn't necessarily a very good thing. And immediately now, we come to an issue. I was moving a little bit quickly. Obviously, if I defend with the bishop... Well, I was going to say then the queen can take. But then I can take the bishop. So it's not all that bad. So if queen takes, I take the bishop. I would like to check and take with my queen, but the knight could come out and defend. So instead, I will give up castling rights. Unless there's any way I can see to avoid it. But I don't. Now, opponent chooses to take away my castling rights instead of taking the pawn, which is fine. And we're running out of material to attack with. So this isn't going to be a very good attacking game. Perhaps. Oh, and I just hung a bishop. Wow, okay. Well, you know, today started off well, but I stopped thinking about the moves, started thinking about, oh, I wish I could attack, and this is what happened. So, we're not going to give up, and let's go. We can push the knight back, which the reason I want to do that is because the knight is guarding this square. I'd like to lift the king up, move the rook over, and get at least a facsimile of safety. Ah, interesting. So opponent castles long, where there's not a lot of pawns, so that maybe at least gives us some chances to do something interesting. We'll move the king over. Now I'm planning to run all the way over here. Knight checks, obviously threatening this pawn. So if we take, rook takes, then this pawn is undefendable because we can't push our pawn. Well, we take, rook takes, knight here. We still end up losing the pawn. We don't really want to trade because we're down material. So is it worth it? But I'm still going to trade. Because of this. Now if the bishop takes, I can push the pawn. The bishop can move back. But at least I'm getting some activity. I can move my my rooks in. But I am also just down a clean piece. At this point, my goal is to get rid of all the pawns, which will be quite difficult. But if I can do that, it will be knight and bishop versus knight. So actually, even if I have to sacrifice my knight for some of the pawns, if I can get all the pawns off the board, I would be willing to guess that my opponent doesn't know how to checkmate with bishop and knight. So it's a little bit of a gamble. And immediately here I go dropping pawns. Now actually that may have been a mistake, but I don't think so. So now we can check. What would that do? Not much. I want to get my knight around. So if we go here, push here, oops, here, push, here, we could just start chasing things around, basically making the position more delicate. But ultimately, this is a bit of a problem. Now I'm threatening this pawn. Now I don't want to get trapped. So I could go here, pushes. I could also check. If king moves up, well, if king moves back, then I check and basically can retry. If it moves over here, I can attack the bishop. Isn't that good? I'm not immensely worried about my knight being trapped because I can always go back. Now either way the king goes. Now if the king doesn't move, I win a bishop. And then we are not safe, but in a much better position. Chance of that is very low. So now we're gonna sort of dance around and get back here. As you maybe can tell, I don't exactly know what I'm doing. Now this pawn is attacked. Both pawns are attacked. I could block here, but then just takes. King moves here, and I'm sort of screwed. But if I don't do that, well, let's calculate. Takes, king here, over here, king back. I'm gonna try it. I think it's just losing. But I at least have to give myself hope. Maybe we'll get a draw. But that's very unlikely. So now the knight moves up. Gets ready to start attacking my pawns. There we go, good move. I want to do this. Knight takes, and it takes a few moves to get back around. It's by no means winning. And yeah. Now I think opponent maybe pushed the wrong pawn. If opponent pushed this pawn, then I was going to say then they would queen with check. Instead, they end up guarding that square. So yeah, it's not looking good. But we gotta keep trying. And now I want to push this, but obviously that's just checkmate. So I guess I have to move back. And there's nothing I can really do. Knight moves up, threatening the pawn. Now I'm looking for stalemates. This is checkmate. This is actually a really funny checkmate. I just run down the board. And then I get checkmated with the knight. Oh well. That wasn't very good. Hey, at least opponent, I didn't even realize this was like 90 points higher rated than me. So, it says I only have one blunder. Let's actually check this. Where did I go wrong? Probably in the opening, I'd imagine. Right here. I think even though this isn't actually the worst advantage, I already messed up by allowing my king to become not safe. The better move, the only good move by far, is just to take the doubled pawns. It's probably not even that good to allow them to double pawns because then it really defends my knight well. Instead I didn't, and then I blundered the bishop. That's right. And after that, just looking at the evaluation number, other than blundering the pawn, I just slowly let the advantage. At this point, actually, now obviously that was not a good move. So yeah, I should have just moved the knight back, attacked this pawn, gone around, and that would have been fine. Oh well. Now I have to... What does this actually look like? Oh man, it's ugly. I know there's a thing for it. So... Oh well, I will learn that for next video. And let's play one more. So far, though, we've gained 8 and lost 6. That's still a gain of rating. And now we'll really push our luck by playing one more game. And we're black again. So we've just alternated colors. That's convenient. We're going to play the French. Not exactly a fighting opening, I don't think. I don't actually know, though. So, and now this is interesting. Immediately sacrificing a pawn for activity. Let's accept. Now immediately they can... Oh, they could move the knight down there. I thought that's what they were going to do. I love that sacrifice, actually. But I wouldn't do it after I'd already sacrificed a pawn, probably. But they do it now. Which is interesting. Maybe they'll do it. Knight and bishop for rook and pawn. It's interesting. Let's go. That's very fun. Now, obviously, I can't block with bishop, or else I lose a rook. But now I've defended the pawn extra, and I'm threatening the queen with my own queen, and it's defended by the knight. So now we should be able to... And now, let's see. We have a piece majority. They have a pawn majority. And now we just need to work on activating our pieces to good squares. I don't think we want to trade. This is a forking the pawn and a check. The check's not actually that good. But interestingly, they take it, obviously threatening this pawn. If they take with the rook, we have to trade. If they take with the bishop, then things get weird because my bishop's not out yet. Well, let's take the pawn. Oh, we're also threatening the rook, so they have to take with the rook. Now we'll activate this bishop. Material is still even, but I do think as the board gets less and less full, and I'm a fool. Speaking of fool, in that position I could have pushed the pawn and then worked my way back to threaten the bishop. Oh, push the pawn, move back to threaten the bishop like that. Now I can do it again. If I can get the knight here now, the bishop won't have to sacrifice itself because the rook can move over to defend, but that's a pretty sad position. And right now this pawn is threatened. So this is looking pretty good. Knight moves to attack this pawn. We need to defend it with the bishop. and to defend this pawn. We need to defend this with the bishop, so when the knight takes, this bishop is still trapped. Now I know it looks like we're going backwards because we are, but now we can threaten this knight. It can't be defended and get going. You can also move the knight around this way, so we don't even have to take the pawn on the way. And I think for as bad as last game was dropping a piece, this game was pretty okay. All right. Now that's threatened, so we defend it again. And then rook actually can't come over, which is just a happy little accident because our knight is positioned perfectly. And this is the nice thing about having the pieces. Basically, we have 4 pieces over here against 2 because the rook is out of play. So now we threaten the knight. It actually doesn't have too many squares. If we just mark the safe squares, so it goes here. But now, well, I was going to say now we can trade and move on with winning the bishop. If we trade, obviously, then the pawn defends. We move here. This pawn can actually push. And things get a little bit weird. Let's trade then and have a new plan of just walking the king over. All these squares are defended by the bishops, which is nice. So rook checks. That sort of just helps me. Like I said, rook can move here, but not here, or here, or here. So it's very hard to attack any of my pieces. So it attacks the knight. I'll move back. This has a dual purpose of if the bishop moves back over here, the rook can't defend it. And now we're going to keep walking the king over. It's really sad actually to see that sacrifice that I like so much. Sort of, I don't know what the actual evaluation is, but it feels like sort of getting really hurt. But again, or that's partially having to do with this bishop getting trapped, which has nothing to do with the actual gambit itself. So now we move here. This is interesting. They can push. If we take, they take. If I take back, rook takes with check. That doesn't happen. We'll move up the bishop. Obviously, we can't take that. So instead, let's move here. Threatening the rook, threatening the pawn. If the rook sidesteps to continue defending the pawn, we can just take. And obviously at this point, 3 pieces for a rook and 2 pawns is still not quite enough. Wait, is that the right evaluation? Yes, it is. So now that's actually defended. If the pawn pushes, we can move here. Still defending our second rank. This is also attacked twice. It can't be pushed. So it should probably be defended. If it's defended, yeah. So now let's get started. Well, actually, let's immediately do Well, actually, let's not overcomplicate things. We'll start by taking the pawn. Now that's a mistake. We can check and win this pawn. And now it's just purely a rook for 3 pieces. And opponent resigns. That felt like a much better game. So I'm glad to end on that. Let's go into review mode. And let's see. Now, unfortunately, I'm afraid of what I'll learn. First of all, what's this gambit? It's not very good, according to the engine. Oh, but I was wrong. Taking is not very good, according to the engine, even though it's not one of the top moves. This immediately, actually, and queen b3, and it just sets up a big threat here. So interesting. In the future now I know not to take this gambit. I had not seen that before, so opponent either dislikes to do that or is well prepared. But now I can castle, and this, unfortunately, is not actually a good move. Maybe it would be normally, because I've seen this pattern before, but with the knight here, just being able to block and take, and now the pawn structure is ruined. And material is equal, but we can safely, looks like, get pieces off the board. And I did miss this before, so I'm sure this best move. No, I was wrong. Well, no, I was right. b6 is now the top move. And then we just slowly start moving the king over. And I've made a mistake. Interesting. Because this is pinned. Okay. I didn't see that at all. That means I should have gone here. Although it's still saying king d6 is fine. Just defend the knight. So I missed that, but it was a one move thing. And from there, it looks like it was pretty good. An opponent resigned. Could have tried to go against for bishop and knight, which I also don't know how to do, but that makes pretty good sense. So those are 3 games. We're up to 1584, which is actually pretty good now checking my old videos, but I had played for a while in between and gotten up quite a lot higher, so... Oh, an opponent resigns. I didn't even look at the final position because there's a knight check winning the rook. My goodness. So that's all. Thank you for watching. Again, if anybody's made it this far, you're really special. I think you'll be the first one. Well, you won't be the first one. Well, you might be, given how these videos get views and average view retention. Good job. Let me know in the comments if you got this far. But that won't happen. But it might. But I'm talking in circles. So that's all. Thank you for watching and goodbye. Oh, if you have any suggestions, make sure to leave them. That's all.